We'll do a review in Lekutei Sichas in Chelek Tazayin. This is the fourth Sicha for the Parsha Vaeira. This is a Rashi Sicha, and the Rebbe struggles why Rashi, Rebbe questions why Rashi brings down seemingly a strange interpretation of Batal Hatzvardeya, that it says in a singular language that once Svardeya came up to plague the Egyptians, and Rashi says that they would bang the Tzvardeya and that would swarm many more Tzvardeyim, more frogs. It seems to be a total miraculous and non-necessary. There's easier and more understood and less kind of miraculous kind of way to explain this pasuk, as Rashi's explained elsewhere in various different details. And the Rebbe is going to explain that essentially, when it says here, bring up the Tzvardeya, the issue here is that this doesn't fit with what Hashem has told originally when they should to Moshe and Aaron. It says V'hal es hatzvardiim. So Hashem told him to bring the tzvardiim, the plural of the tzvardim. And here the pasuk says that Vatal hatzvardeya. It seems to be a conflict in what Hashem told him and what actually happened here. And the only way to really explain that tzvardim is through Rashi's interpretation, that when you bang them and there is many tzvardim that was swarming from that tzvardeya, that's the way to understand that it's not a conflict, as we'll see at great length inside the Sicha. Also, Yenishul Torah, there's what is overweighs, what, as we'll see in the later on. Aleph. So we started from Posik Vayet Aaron es Yodei Goimer. So Aaron waved his hand as these plagues were done by Aaron, and it says Vatal Hatzvardeya in a singular. The Tzvardeya came up, Vatchasas Eretz Mitzrayim, and it covered the land of Egypt. Is Rashi mighty the Werter Batal Hatzvardeya? Rashi quotes the words that Tzvardeya came up. It is Mefarish, and he explains Tzvardeya Achas Hoysa. It says a singular, it was really one Tzvardeya. Voyumakin Hoysa, and then they would beat it, Vihimatezes Nechilim Nechilim Vechulim, and that would spring off from it. Rows and rows of frogs would come from it. In Pashtus, and so when we read this simply, Rashi is coming to tell here, and we'll see soon the next part of the Rashi, the simple meaning. But what is Rashi's issue over here? Why it says here that Tzvardeya came up in a singular language. Shasi is given Aribu Tzvardim, but there was a many Tzvardim. So why does it say Batal HaTzvardeya? The Far is Rashi Mefarish. That's why Rashi explains. As lichatchila is take given blois ain't Tzvardeya, that in the beginning there was actually only one frog, one Tzvardeya. Nor durch dem was you makin oiso. When through this that you would beat her, so she gave of herself nechilim, rows and rows and of frogs. Now, this issue is also addressed in the Gemara and Shmeis Rabbah, but there it's a little bit different. Answer is not like it says in Rashi. Euch die Gemara und Shmeis Rabbah. They're also basing themselves on this, that it says Svardeya in a singular language. Bringt der Rav zwei Deyes, and it brings two opinions. Rabbi Akiva Oimer Tzvardeya Achas Hoysa, that it was one Tzvardeya, Vihi Shritza, and as she swarmed, Umola Kol Haaretz Mitzrayim, and the whole land, the whole land of Mitzrayim became full from that which this Tzvardeya Hishritz. Amalei Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Chulu. Rabbi Elazar says no. Tzvardeya Achas Hoyso. It was really one Tzvardeya. Shor Kolahem. It whistled to them. It whistled to all the other Tzvardeim. And they came. So that means they came from elsewhere. So this Rabbi Akiva is also not the same as Rashi says. Rabbi Akiva says that she swarmed. That means that they were born. Over here, by the banging, they just came out, not in the way. So let's see, how come Rashi chooses not to say as one of these interpretations? Darf man verstehen. Pirush Rashi is doch yadua meyused lifi pshute shel mikra. Rashi's commentary, as known, is based on the simple translation meaning of the verse. We know that Hashem does not make miracles in vain, does not just do miracles. And that's something which also a minor 5-year-old will understand. Is a klal was mistaber oich derech hapshat. This is a rule that the Gemara says, but this also is fitting for a child. The Rebbe quotes from Drosh Saran this rule of Magona. It's also logical in the study according to the simple meaning. Figureta Mo Barucha has already spoken at some time at length. Is b'meila their seichel mechayiv, so logic dictates as oich ba'anes vos hot pasir. Even when we talk about the miracle that did take place, this whole thing of the tzvardik was a nes, but we don't have to increase the nes. We don't have to make it so fantastic beyond what's necessary. Is a viful meken zogam mefader to the extent that we're able to say and explain as the nes hot an onhalt in darke ateva, that this miracle has some hold in the ways of nature. Darf man it on them, and so we should not accept as is anoifim was the nes brecht legamri de chukei ateva. That is, it's a miracle. It's in such a way that totally breaks the laws of nature. Because that additional to do it in a way which is totally breaking from the nature, that's in vain. There would be no purpose in doing it dafki in such a way. So in that case, Pavos bringt Rashi the Pirush for Medrash. Why does Rashi bring the interpretation of the Medrash, which is Tanchum and other places, as hoyu makin oisav matazas nechilim, that they would beat her, and then she would shoot off rows and rows of these tzfardim. Bosazanes, this is a kind of a miracle. Adur hakoah, that by beating zon from the ariskum and night bashaf nechilim, that there should come all these new rows and rows of tzfardim. This is a fantastic nes. As there's that has really no hold at all in ways of nature. So why did Rashi choose this Tanchuma or these other ones that say this fantastic, outlandish kind of miracle that is so out of nature? He could have explained, like in the Gemara in the Shmeis Rabbah, Vidas Rabbi Lezer ben Azariah, as the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, as the Tzvardeya Shor Kolahem Vehem Bo. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah seems to say that she whistled to them and they came. Rashi Taishtas of Dort, as Rashi over there in the Gemara interprets it, Ashamu Koilo Kola Tzvardim Sheba'olam, that they heard all the frogs in the world heard the sound, the voice of this Svardeya. Was the Rin is not given der Neis Mufla von Abriya Chadosha. Over here, we don't have to have this wonderful miracle from something, a new creation. So over here, nothing new was created. It's just she attracted all the other tzvardim. That would be Rashi could choose the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azari. Further, or the Al Koponim, at least Rashi could have chosen Vidas Rabbi Akiva. As Rabbi Akiva said, as Shiritzo Molokol Eretz Mitzrayim, that she swarmed, and that filled all the land of Mitzrayim. That's also fantastic, but at least they were born here, not as usual. They weren't beaten and just came out. Also, this also needed to be a creation, a miraculous way, that from a Tzvardeya, all of a sudden, there should all be all these Tzvardeya. Is aber gebunden, but still that would be tied together from Teva HaHilode with the boundaries of the nature of birth comes from the way of Ishritza, from the Tzvardeya versus Ishritza. Rashi touched, as Rashi says, from its inside, the Yotzu. So babies came out. So that's enough, but this is a miraculous way. All these babies to flood the entire Egyptian Mitzrayim, but that would still be miraculous. But at least the way they came about is in the natural way, is the way of birth. Over here, they were banging and they just came out. So why does Rashi choose to say it this way? We'll go further in the Rashi. Based on Nochis Rashi Mamshich, then Rashi continues. Zohu Medrash. This is the Medrash that I just told you. Upshuta Yesh Leimar. We can say the simply meaning is Shirutz Hatzvardi in Koire Loshen Yechidus. This the swarming of the frogs. He calls it in a singular way. So Batal Hatzvardeya, the swarming is a singular, the act of swarming of the tzvardim can be called in a singular way. And likewise, v'chein, the same thing is when we say in the pasuk later on, Vatihi Hakinom. What does it mean, Vatihi Hakinom? It's also a singular, it's not kinim. And it's not the kino even. It's not one, it's kinom. So the kinom means harichisha. That means this warming. That's called the kinom. The swarming of the kinim is called in this language of yochid, harichisha. Kedei der ben chomesh lemikra soll es klarer verstehen, so that the 5-year-old who's learning the Chumash should be to understand this more clearly, that what this is the swarming of the Tzvardeya, it's the swarming of the lice of the Kinim. But Rashi also translated in the language of that nation, which is in French. So Rashi says that it means Geduliro Belaz. But Akino means the swarming in Old French, that's belaz, and that would mean. Ba'af batal hatzvardeya, and also the meaning of batal hatzvardeya doesn't mean the frog went up. What batal hatzvardeya means the swarming. Gri nuliro. By the kinim, it's called giduliro, and here it's called grinuliro. Okay, so basically, Rashi is trying to tell you that here it's not a talking about frogs. Over there, it's not talking about the lice. It's talking about the swarming of the Sephardeia, the swarming of the lice. As Rashi says, the swarming is called in Old French. We need to understand. Is the Rashi. So first of all, why would Rashi first say a medrash and then say we can explain it b'pshuta? First, to begin with, Rashi's intention is to explain the simple meaning of the pasuk. Or nor dan when the pshata kosov is nidglati, only in a situation when the meaning of the pasuk is not smooth. Bringt Rashi anagode hamayasheves dibre hamikro. Rashi brings a agode, a expounding that would also settle the words of the pasuk. So first we got to bring the pshat, and then bring an additional agode, as Rashi says, that can settle and explain the pasuk. Is vi kumtes. How come was do is Rashi Magdim here? Rashi first introduces then Pirush was Aralein schreibt as this is Midrash. First he says the commentary that he himself says this is the expounding, the Medrash. And he brings it far than Pirush versus Rashi schreibt. He brings that before the interpretation that Rashi himself says that that's the simple meaning. And further, the Rebbe's going to difficulty in the Rashi. What does Rashi exactly mean when Rashi says that it's the swarming of the tzvardeya, which is called batala tzvardeya? So bishloima, we understand those was Rashi darf onkum and tzaraya. We know why Rashi needs evidence, a proof, as had tzvardeya meant shirutz tzvardim. That the tzvardeya batala tzvardeya means the swarming of the tzvardim. Und der Fall steht es Bloschen Yechidus, and that's why it says in a singular, because we're not talking about the actual frogs, the tzvardeim, but we're talking about the swarming, and the swarming of the frog, but that's a singular Loshen. So Rashi needs evidence to explain that. Is moving by pastures. We know, understand that very simply why we need that. Es ist schwer zu sagen, als der Nomen Tzvardeya, because that's something without evidence on our own, it's still difficult to say that when you say Tzvardeya, Batalar Tzvardeya, Zolmein and Dizach, that means Tzvardeya means from Shirutz HaTzvardeya. It means the swarming, Batal HaTzvardeya, and the swarming went up. Swarming of the Tzvardeya. Difficult. But steht nicht im Pasuk. The pasuk doesn't talk about the swarming. It says tzvardia. So batal tzvardia means the swarming. When there is a begriff was legt sich euch, that it's a concept. Any insect swarms. So why do we call the swarming tzvardiim if it's supposed to not talk about tzvardim? It's talking about swarming. The tzvardeya is the swarming. So all kinds of insect. Only davkev means tzvardeya. So why would swarming be in the word tzvardeya? So Rashi needs to bring evidence. The far brings Rashi araya. So Rashi therefore brings evidence from Batia Kino. But there also it means the rechisha, the crawling of the Batia Kinom, was the type from Kinom is rechisha. Their roichesh. And so when we say the kinom, that sounds that they make a lot of rechisha, why do we call lice the name of kinim, which represents lice, and we say that rechisha over there? This idea, the sounds when the roichesh, that's not connected to kinim. Yet the word kinim is used, the lice is used as kinom, that rechisha. In other words, both shirutz hat svardim given anders viba anders rotzim v'chulu. If there was, let's say, a unique kind of swarming of Tzfardim would be a different type. So it makes sense that the Torah would say Tzfardim talking about the Rechisha because it would be unique to Tzfardim. If it was anders bei andere Schrotzechulu, is damals glattiger zu sagen, then it would be easier to say as Tzvardeya, even though the pasuk called Tzvardeya, punkt wie es meint dem Sheretz. So Tzvardeya is a frog. It means the specific. But if this specific frog swarm in a certain way, so then that would also mean that special way would be talking about how the Tzvardeya swarms, and that would be meaning Vatala Tzvardeya, the swarming that it does. Tzvardeya is different than other insects. In Eisen, it looks differently. Oifering and its conduct, it does a rechish, it does a swarming. Shirutz. Then we would say that when the pasuk says Tzvardeya, it's talking about this unique kind of shirutz, this kind of swarming, sein speziellen shirutz, this special kind of shirutz. So then we would understand, we would understand what it means, because Tzvardeya would be this unique expression of the shirutz that Tzvardim do. Now, Chotching ganzen glattig is this that would not be totally smooth, but let's not gedarf sein ashinu in word. Because how could you have the same word Tzvardeya meaning a frog and also meaning the swarming, the shirutz? Should have been some change in the word. Under Shmenukra, at least different vowelized. Al derech vi bakinim, similar to bakinim, it's not doesn't say Vatia Kinim, it says Vatia Kinom. Steht Kinom, come on. So, but in this case, there is no special, Rashi says this is just a shirutz, the swarming of the Tzvardeya, which is a shirutz, which is by all other insects. So how would the Torah talk about a shirutz and it calls it Tzvardeya? Vibaldo, as their posik zog themselves Meloshon shirutz. Sai by Tzvardim. It says it by Tzvardim, by the frog. Sai by Allah sheretz nefesh chaya. Also by every swarming of all the living creatures, they're all called shirutz. Is lechere schwer zu sagen as Tzvardeya meint a zach, so that makes it difficult to say that Tzvardeya means an item. Which is the same. That shirutz is a common thing by all insects, the way they swarm is called shirutz. And here the Torah is talking about the shirutz and it calls it tzvartim. So that's why Rashi brings a proof. Matia kinom. Over there, even though kinom means lice, but here the kinom, it's a little change. It means is the rai batia kinom. Okay, so that's why Rashi brings the evidence. So over nicht move on, but it's not understood. Pavos is by Rashi poshud as vatihi akinom meint rechisha. Why does Rashi know that by the kinom it means that hesing, that the sounds of the kinom meint rechisha? Was bafar banugun sich dort Rashi mit dem Teich. For Rechisha. Over there, Rashi doesn't prove that Kino means the Rechisha. Bringt nicht kein of them, doesn't bring proof that means Kino means Rechisha. Bringt nicht kein zweiten Pirush, and it doesn't bring a second Pirush like by us. Over there, when it comes to the Taich in the Pasuk, but here Kino, Rashi says the Rechisha. By Vatala Tzvardeya, Zokter, or here, he needs evidence. He says, this is not even the first pirush. As yesh loymar shirutz tzvardim koreloshin yichidus, that the swarming of the tzvardim is called in a singular way. So basically, the Rebbe says that we understand why it's hard to explain this pshat, that Svardi means the Rechisha, that it means the Shirutz. It's understood why we need evidence for that, because it's very difficult to say that Svardim, which has the exact same vowelization, means a frog. All of a sudden, it means a Tzvardim just so that it can be in the Loshen Yechidus in a singular. Rashi needs evidence for that. How does Rashi taka know what Kino means the Rechisha, that the sounds that the Kino made, maybe it means actually the Kino done. So, and over here it's only the second shot. So, what is going on over here? In Ois Gimel, the Rebbe will explain from the Meforshim that the word kinim, Rebbe asked, why is kinim so simple that it means rechisha? Rashi said, it's because of the change of the loshen kinom. And that's why tzvardeya is the exact same spelling as, the same word as frog. Mele kinom has a little bit of a difference. It's not kinim, it's not kino, so it's not kinom. Kinom therefore could mean rechisha, but tzvardim is a little bit more difficult, and that's why Rashi brings this as proof from kinom. By kinom, we know it means because there's a change. By tzvardeya, there is no change in the pasuk for the name of tzvardeya. And the Rebbe explains the rest of the Rashi, very interesting in the French. But still, at the end of the day, we are saying, Rashi says, we should say that tzvardeya means thus, this, just like kinom, even though kinom is a change of language, but it's still used by the word kinom. So here too, we should say tzvardeya means the shritz as well. But that makes it more difficult, and maybe that's why the Rebbe says this comes as the second shot. Let's look inside. Gimel. Meforshim zayin and Masbir, Meforshim explain, as Rashi's hechrich zu treitchu vathiya kinom. What is Rashi's proof to translate vathiya kinom means a rechisha, the rechisha of the kinom, is from them was the lotion is kinom, that there is a nun kemutza, there is a komatz under the nun. Normally, kinim is with a chirik under the nun. Here is with a komatz. But it's not loshon rabim. That's not a plural language, which is kinim. Or not loshon yochid. It's not also a singular because it's not kino. So therefore, we need to say adon meintes need them shame fun kinim. Doesn't mean the name lies kinim, nor der badait, but here it means for rechisha sakinim, the whispering of the kinim, the rechisha of the kinim, the hissing of the kinim. Uleidem is moving. Now we understand, as the far is the oich nitkin full raya, that's not a complete evidence, as oich tzvardeya doesn't mean frog, mean shirutzat tzvardim, means the swarming of the tzvardim. Because by us, there is no change of the language in the Hebrew. The bald has fundem loshen vatal hat tzvardeya. Because in the language tzvardeya, it's not like by the kinim, where it's kinom. Over here, when it says vatal tzvardeya, is the tokene choche, there is no proof, as das meint epes anders, with the nomen von tzvardeya b'losh yoche. There's no proof that means something different than just the name tzvardeya in a singular language. There's no change of the vowels. It's the regular word tzvardeya. So therefore, we need a proof, and this is not a full proof. And because of this, the Rebbe is going to say at the end of this thought, and when he finishes up, maybe that's why Rashi has to bring this as a second interpretation, because in Pshat it's not evident over here. But before the Rebbe concludes this, the Rebbe brings out another explains the length, the idea that Rashi talks over here. Das is euch der Diuk in Rashi. This is also what Rashi's precise words. When Rashi says "Zechein batia kinom," he says like kinom, and he says further va'af v'atal hatzvardeya, and also v'atal hatzvardeya. Why? Because tzvardeya is not as simple as kinom over there. It's kinom means it's a change, but also tatzvardeya, and also was it is moisif. And that Rashi adds the word grinu lira belaz to explain the word Sfardiim. This is good. But the Rebbe has a problem. Why does Rashi have to explain when it comes to Sfardiim, give us the French word, the belaz, the Losh Namzu, to give us grinu lira? Why does Rashi have to do that? The child knows the word of Sfardim. We had it a bunch of times. He knows the word shirutz. So why does Rashi have to give the French words for shirutz hatzvardim? Why does he give them? So it's a very interesting, idea that I brings out over here, that the Rashi wants to bring that in French there is a difference between when it comes, it has the same words, the same French words as Svardeya gets a change when we call it the Shirutz HaTzvardi. And but by us, Batalat Svardeya in Hebrew, there's no change. Let's look inside. So this is also going to explain on Oich, Grinu Lira Belaz, where Rashi brings that down. Rashi doesn't bring the what is in French, what is in Old French, the meaning of the word Tzvardim. We had the word Tzvardim many times. Rashi doesn't say. It says earlier many times. So why does Rashi have to teach you? Is doch verstandig. We understand that Pirush Tzvardim is babust, because Rashi doesn't say that means. Why doesn't he have to say? We know what Tzvardim are. Is no them Rashi zogt Shirutz Tzvardim. So what is Rashi saying over here? That our pasuk Tal Tzvardeya means the swarming of the Tzvardim. Pirush Shirutz. So we also know what Shirutz means, because basement from prayer, we know what Shirutz is. You know what Tzvardim is, because the pasuk says Vishorat HaYoir Tzvardim. The Yair, the now will swarm with Tzvardim. It was to the Oivder Balaz. So what are we accomplishing with the Balaz over here? So why does Rashi have to tell you Gru Niliro? Nor the Bavornish in them, what does Rashi come to tell us? It's like this. Because Tzvardeya Balaz is Grinuli. That's what it's called, Grinuli. Baldos Veis, doch der Ben Chamesh. Ben Chamesh knows that what a frog is called. It's called the Grinuli. Baldos doch sein Las, that's his language. Französisch. Euch biyemenu. Also by us, a frog is called a Grinuli in French. A frog is called Grinuli. And what is Shirutz HaTzvardim Belaz? When we want to say that, when Verta Shinu Grinuli Ro. So there is a change from the language of a frog to the language of the swarming frogs, which is called Grinu Lira. Similar to the change of Kinom, becomes a change when we talk about the swarming. Ashtot Kinim, it's called Kinom. Instead of Grinuli, it's called Grinulira. So Rashi says to him, but we have to say the same thing in the pasuk, even though in the pasuk it just says Svardeya, and there is no change of the word Svardeya. From deswegen Rashi is telling him, and even the Tzvardeya also is Choches is Nitokin Shim. So you don't see no change, it's still called Tzvardeya. Is that Pirush Grinuli Ra Mibalaz, Nit Grinuli. Over here, it's Grunu Lora. Not Grunu, this is not Svardeya, but this is the Shirutz HaTzvardi. Even though there's no shade, that's what I'm saying. And also Vatar HaTzvardi. So what is the proof then? Here it's Svardeya, so how are we bringing a proof from Kinim? Over there it's Kinom. That's why it means something else. But Rav says Svardeya. And that's what Rashi is difficult. Rashi says Va'af. So why is it Taka Va'af? What's the proof to us? No. But still, since the Kinom, even though Kinim is very specific lice, and yet the Torah uses that to describe, how could it change? So Va'af Tzvardeya, even though here we don't have a change, maybe the swarming can be called Tzvardeya. Bald as the Torah ruft fort on the Rechishas HaKinim with Nomen Kinoms. The Torah still refers to the Rechisha, to the hissing of the Kinim with the language, with the name Kinim. Nit kukendig was Rechisha hat nicht zu tun, notwithstanding the fact that this hissing had nothing to do, nit blois mit min von Kinim. It doesn't have to do, there's nothing to connect it. It's not a special hissing that it's a special Rechisha that the Kinim do. Was das ist der Iker Schwierigkeit in Obteich von Kinom, that is as Rechisha. Why do we have a problem? Why do we have a difficulty explaining that Kinom is Rechisha? Because why would Rechisha have to do with Kinom? Kinom is a lice, and this has to do with the Rechisha. And the same thing on Shirutz, on von Tzvardeya, on Shirutz. Because the word, why would, there's no unique Tzvardeya, no Shirutz, and yet we're saying Shirutz. So, still, since the Torah over there means Kinom Rechisha, is the Pariyesh Loimar, as ich Tzvardeya bei uns, meint Shirutz HaTzvardi, but it also means the Shirutz HaTzvardi. So because it's still not as clear as by Kinom, here it says Tzvardeya, is the same word Tzvardeya, which means frog. It's hard. Like according to this, you could have explained was Rashi is Magdim the Pirush HaMedrash, why Rashi introduces the explanation of the Medrash far the Pirush HaPipshute before the meaning according to the Pshat. Well, the Pshute benitten the Dan, because this case of Pshute, in our case, is nit as it's not so smooth, it's not so evident. We don't have to say that Kinal, because over here it just says Tzvardeya, so it's at a different level, and maybe that's why it comes as the second shot. In Ois Daled, the Rebbe is going to say that we can't say that the advantage of the first Pirush, why it comes first, because in the general pasuk it doesn't say anything about the swarming, and it's better because the word Svardeya is to mean the swarming is difficult, but that, so in other words, the disadvantage of the first one is because there's no hint in the pasuk that they were beating it and it produced all these tzvardim. So the Rebbe said that Rashi should have then used the lashon not upshutoi, but it should say pshuto shel mikra. When it says pshuto shel mikra, means in the context of the pasuk, it fits more. So here, if the problem with the first one is that it fits better, and the word here, the word pshuto is just the fact to teach the word tzvardeya better than the fitting. So Rashi should have said pshuto shel mikra, because pshuto refers to the word. And in this case, the word isn't any better, according to the second shot. In this case, it's pshuto shel mikra, Rashi should have said. Let's look inside Dalet. Aber in Emerson Kemen Nitzogen, in truth, we cannot say, as nor to leave them, that only for this reason is Rashi Magdim the Pirush HaMedrash, far dem Pirush Shirutz HaTzvardim, that Rashi introduces first the Medrash before the Pirush of Shirutz HaTzvardim, because Tzvardim just, it doesn't fit that it should mean the swarming of the Tzvardim, because there is no change in the word Tzvardeya to mean that. Ubahagdim, the Rebbe gives us that the reason it's difficulty because Rashi should use the word Pshuta Shel Mikra to bring us in the betterment of the second chat over the Medrash. If zum Madgish sein, der brings down, if zum Madgish sein, as a Pirush is ausgehalten, Leuten derech Hapshat und nicht Drash. Rashi wants to emphasize that a commentary is more fitting according to the simple meaning, and not according to the Drash, but nutz sich Rashi midi betuim. Rashi uses the following expression. Aleph, as it says by us, vi nunzer fall upshute. Rashi says upshute is simple. But sometimes there's a second way Rashi says upshute shel mikra. The simple meaning of the pasuk. What's the difference? What's the chiluk when Rashi says the simple upshute or upshute shel mikra? The chiluk zwischen zei is moving and pashtas. The difference is very simply understood. The Rosh Druk Upshute Shel Mikra, when Rashi says the simple meaning of the pasuk meant as the Pirush is loitem pshat from the Mikra, that the Pirush is according to the general meaning of the pasuk. From them close the Kuntech HaKosov, that is from the general, the contents, the meaning of the verse in the general fits more into pshat. Like taking the Lashon of Pshute, when it says Pshute, on them sim shel mikra, without saying that this is of the pasuk. Meint ados is the pirush haposhut lois from the word. That means that this is the more simpler meaning just from the word, or the inyan, or the subject. Rashi is basing himself, so this is the simple meaning. Hagam as es ken sein, as in it masim zum pashtus from closed dick and inhal. It's also possible that it doesn't really fit the simple general meaning, but pshutoi is just this word, not giving the pshuta shamikra. So therefore, if you say iskum been done, so according to our case, Rashi should have said over here pshuta shamikra, not the pshuta. If we should accept, as those was Rashi is magdin them pirush hamedrash farn pirush al pshuta. The reason that Rashi introduces first the interpretation of the medrash before he gives you the simple meaning is as the far is because weil der Teich Shirutz hat Svardim liegt nicht in Wort Svardeya. Because the translation of Shirutz hat Svardim does not fit in the word Svardeya. In other words, our problem with the interpretation of Pshuta is that it doesn't really fit in the word. Mashiach in Leuten Pirush HaMedrash was the Teich von Svardeya is kipshute ein svardeya. So he, according to Medrash, fits very well with the Lashon svardeya. Which would mean the word fits more in the pshat. That's not real. That's not the case. The stam from word that this word shirutz hat svardim that it fits more. No, nor pshuta shel mikra chulu. Rashi should have said that in the fitting of the pasuk, in the word tzvardeya, actually the medrash is better. That's not the pshuta. Rashi should have said pshuta shel mikra. Chudo says, since there is no hint in the continuation of the verse. So you maki noise that they would beat it, and she would shoot off these rows and rows of frogs. And the far is the erste pirush loit medrash. That's the first meaning is according to the medrash. Anes was vert arois gelernt derech hadrash b'Torah. It's a miracle which is learned by the style of drash expounding Torah. Only pshute shel mikra pasuk, in which there's no mention darf oiskumen as the pshat from Batala Tzvardvedeya is Shubus Hatzvar. So Rashi should have said the word upshutei shall mikra, not upshutei, and therefore that's not the reason. In Ois Hey, the Rebbe will try to answer and to show that the Pirush HaMedrash is actually in a way fitting in the general. I mean, before we said that according to the Medrash, the general topic of the pasuk is not so understood because this whole miracle, we don't find it's a Medrash, but But the Rebbe is going to show that in a way, the Pirush HaMedrash, because the Torah writes here Tzvardeya, even though there's 10 times Tzvardim beforehand, and all of a sudden the Torah writes Tzvardeya, there has to be some reason for it, and that's what the Meforshim explain, that it's an indication that here took something different than all the other times. And in this case, it was the Tzvardeya because of this miraculous thing that you would bang in the Tzvardeya. So it means that actually that fits in the Pasuk in a way more than saying that the Tzvardeya means the swarming of the Tzvardeya. So why does the Torah say over here, Davkid, the swarming in this Parvatal Hat Tzvardeya, different than all the other times? So in a way, the general meaning of the pasuk fits more according to the Medrash, and maybe that's the reason why he comes first. The Rebbe will explain. But in the end of the day, we still don't see why this is more pshutoi in the taich of the word Tzvardeya. Let's look at what I say. No chatmi in Pirush Rashi. There is something also surprising in Rashi, but the Rebbe is bringing out this question to bring out the point. Rashi Alain types in only Parashat Vayishlach. Rashi himself translates in the beginning of the portion of Vayishlach as derech eretz loymar al shvorim harbe shoir. It is the way of the world to say, when you talk about many oxen, you say ox. Apam horgu ishu b'ritzonim ikru shoir. Shoir is a singular, but it means many oxen. They call the kind, it's called shoir. As meken rufen asach von ein min, that you are able to call many, even though it's the same kind, but you can call it in a singular way because of its kind, even though there's many in that kind. Al shem amin, on the name of the min. But the Rashi oich dog, you can't teach him a pashto, so Rashi could have translated here simply as vatal hat tzvardeya meant harbe tzvardim. It means many tzvardim, just like the shor means many shorim. Und das, was steht Loshin Yochid, and that's what it says Loshin Yochid, is das Hashem Aminus the Mina. How come Rashi doesn't say that? So, Meforshim explains, and Meforshim Masbi, and Meforshim explain, as Barashi is the Shver, the Shina Loshin Pasuk. Rashi has difficulty. Why the Pasuk changed all of a sudden the language? Yes, Shver, Tzvardi, Eya can mean all the Tzvardi, but there's a change. The whole time we're calling it Tzvardim, and all of a sudden we change it to Tzvardeya. In Hemshech, the Shina Loshin Pasuk. In Hemshech from the Parsha, in the flow of this Parsha, where the Makkah, the Mont Ganset and Mol, the plague is mentioned full 10 times. Every time it says in a plural, Tzvardiim. Tofravos is the pasuk Punkt Dom Mishana. Why is the pasuk specifically here changed? When Shrai B'Lashem Yochid here all of a sudden writes it on the name of the min, just a Tzvardeya. Batala Tzvardeya is the Fungedrungen. So from this we can derive as does make it Hashem Amin. It doesn't mean that the min over here. Nor the pasuk meint on Madgish Zayin and Loshen Yochid. The Torah wants to emphasize that there is an individual. This is not a min; it's the tzvardeya. In order to hint on a matter which only in this case happened. It was a tzvardeya. That was over here under far Taish Rashi tzvardeya chasoyser. There was one tzvardeya. So Ledem is moving. So for this, it's understood that Pirush HaMedrash, that this interpretation of the Medrash, Chochzi is Adrash, even though it's expounding, it's saying this miraculous thing that happened. Hotes Omer HaYisune from Pirush Shirutz HaTzvardim, it still gets an advantage. It has an advantage, the Pshutim Pshat that Rashi brings, the swarming of the Tzvardim. Mitzadem Toichem HaKsuvim, Pshutish HaMikra. When we talk about Pshuta Shemikra, the general, the Kant of Sukkim. So over there's an advantage to the Pirush HaMedrash. Davke Leuten Pirush HaMedrash is verstandig that specifically Where the Medrash explains it, we understand. How come here it says that Tzvardei went up in a singular? But they don't understand why did the Torah write it over here? Even though we're able to understand, it doesn't say every Lashon Yachid because over there it's talking about the Tzvardim and not about the swarming of the Tzvardim. The only time you write Tzvardeya and Lashon Yachid, so we're talking about the swarming of the Tzvardeya. So therefore, and the previous places it doesn't talk about the swarming, so that's why it says Tzvardim. Over here we talk about the Tzvardim, about the swarming, the Shirutz HaTzvardim. So that's why it talks about Tzvardeya. But that is over the Shverikat Fakert. But then we have the opposite understand. So how come the Torah is all of a sudden talking here about the swarming of the Tzvardeya? Why doesn't it just say the Tzvardim like it says the whole time? Mele, according to the Medrash, we understand why he's changing here because he's trying to tell you that in this case was one Tzvardeya. Is over the Shverigkeit verkehrt. So this in the Pshat, this difficulty is as hot umetun euch do gedarft sein L'shein Rabbi. It should have been L'shein Rabbi. We should have had there also Tzvardim. The Lashon Yochid is not glatik. It's not smooth. Why we say here Lashon Yochid. That they did the Chartumim and they brought up the Tzvardim. So we should have said over here also, why are we all of a sudden talking about the swarming of the Tzvardim? So we're going to say that's why this is the second Pshat. The Far bringt es Rashi auf zweiten Pshat und the Pirish HaMedrash is that erster und Iker Pirish of Pshat Shemikra. That's the first and the main interpretation according to the Pshat. So that's why we can say that the Medrash fits better in the Teichna and Yonim in the Pshat Shemikra. But we still don't understand why Rashi says Pshat. The word Sfardeya fits more according to the Medrash than according to the Rashi, because according to Rashi, Shirutz HaTzvardim is called also a Tzvardeya. So benochals nicht verantwortet, mit was is the zweite Pirush mehr Pshutei? Why is the second one more Poshet? In Taich from the Verta Vatala Tzvardeya with the Pirush HaMedrash, why is it more than the Pirush HaMedrash? The Medrash seems to translate the word Tzvardeya beautifully. It was one Tzvardeya, and over here, Punkt verkehrt. I mean, the Rebbe doesn't say it over here, but the Rebbe wrote out over here, Shirutz HaTzvardim takes some proofs, V'chein from Vakinom and Runila, and still V'af, that here too it means that. But why would this be true? And the Rebbe says that there's another issue over here. The issue is, how does the Tzvardeya coming up fit with what the Tzivu Hashem was? Let's look inside. But is the beer in there, the explanation there. Those was Rashi's oisun tzimavonen, this that Rashi is coming to answer over here is nit belois the shverigkeit. It's not just the difficulty mitzad dem shinu loshen because of the change of the language. Why does it say tzvardeya and not tzvardiyim? But nochmer, there's an even greater problem. The loshen vatal hat tzvardeya b'l'shen yochid too. It says that the Tzvardeya came up in a singular, in a way of a singular, is Euch in Stira zum Anzug von dem Ebersten zu Aaron. This seems to be contradicting the instruction of Hashem to Aaron in the composing in the previous verse. Hashem says to him, wave your hand with your stick, and v'halas hatzvardim goimer, and bring up the tzvardim. Bottom from that had Goshe, because now when the emphasis is the halas hatzvardim, they bring up the problem, nit wie bei Makas Arbe was state, not unlike by the plague of the Arbe, by the locust, it says over there, by the plague of the Arbe, and there it says, Netei Yotcha al Eretz Mitzrayim. So over there it says, wave your hand over the land of Egypt, Bishvil Makas Arbe, for the plague of Arbe V'Yal. So it says a singular loshen. Or the makabar, that's by other makas. And doesn't just tell him the plague that is coming, but he tells him the specific, what the consists of that he's bringing up the tzvardim. By other makas, it just says, the teis yotzcha ba'arbe. Doesn't go in the details. But here the emphasis bring up the tzvardim. Is move on. It's understood as the tzivut Aaron is not bagren. It's that the command, the instruction to Aaron is not limited just to the preparation in the beginning for Neteyes Yotchem Matcha Goimer that you should wave your hand. That's it. That's only your job. Nor darf es ausführen bis zum. He needs to accomplish it. The completed bis zum Arich bring the Tzvardim Poel Mamish, to bring in actuality the tzvardim unin aribui, and in many v'halas tzvardim, he has to bring up all the tzvardim. Aaron has an instruction to bring up the tzvardim. So how does he fulfill that instruction just by bringing up one tzvardeya? To be hoter es mekayim given. How did he fulfill it based lepoil is as given in a neufin, when in actuality it was only in a way from a talat tzvardeya. In tzvardeya, he just brought up one tzvardeya. That's why Rashi says that one tzvardeya had all the tzvardeim in it. The Faris, Rashi Mefarish, that's what Rashi explains. Boy, you makinoi, so they would beat it at one tzvardeya. Vihi matezes, she would push out mechil, rows and rows. Agam as lechatchila gebracht, even though to the beginning he brought up dur vayet arnes yode going through Aaron waving his head. Just one tzvardeya. As is over given as that tzvardeya, what kind of a tzvardeya was it? Was matezes nechilin that would push out rows and rows. Sie spritzt, it sprays al derech wie as beklappt meime Mitzrayim. Where you bring the waters of Egypt, spritzt Wasser. It spritzes water. Water is not created from the banging on the water. That water that is there spritzes. Nicht as wenn beschaffen noch Wasser mein Lesch. It's not new water created from nothing into being. So is given with der tzvardeya. Likewise, it was with this frog, was is gekommen von dem Mitzrayim that come from the water of Mitzrayim. Und es ist kein nicht wer es klappt. It doesn't make a difference who is the one that is not Aaron that is banging it, because it's a tzvardeya that has all the tzvardeya. Therefore, is Rashi mashmid and bord also hoye Mitzrayim. Say Mitzrayim doesn't make a difference. It's a matzvardeya that when you bang it, it gives off nechil. Is verstandig. So based on this, we understand. Was Rashi can do nicht einteichen, but Rashi cannot interpret over here being Gemara Shmeis Rabba and Gemara Shmeis Rabba. As Shorkolem v'himbo, that it whistled to them, to the other tzvardim, and they came. Or that Ishritzo Molokol Eretz Mitzrayim, or they swarmed, they gave birth and they filled from the Me'ayin, as the Rebbe brought from Rashi before. Like they were born, these frogs. Because according to that, it will turn out as Arnot Bepoil of Gebracht nit mer wie ein Tzvardeya. That would mean that he only brought one Tzvardeya. Und der Ribud hat Tzvardim. And how did the many Tzvardim hat sich aufgetan? Durch Shorka. That was accomplished through the whistling. Or the Hishritza, or the fact that it gave bird, it swarmed them. So then he would not have been fulfilled the command, bring up the plural. The was Rashi bringing the pirush matas nechilim. That's what Rashi is to bring the interpretation that it would spritz off, it would push off these rows and rows, because that was the quality of this Sfardei itself, all the rows that it contained inside it, and that was the fulfillment of the Hashem's command. Zion. The Baal der Posig zog befedish. Der Zivut Zahn is given Behalas at Tzfardim Loshen Rabbi. So the fate is that you have to bring up the Tzfardim in the plural. Muss im Posik euch sein Nirmes al Kolponim. So the Posik should also be hinting you about Zoi Erodem Tzivu Mekayim. So how does it hint in the Posik how we fulfill this? Is the being in them? The explanation is Batal hat Tzfardeya. What does it mean that Tzfardeya went up? We can explain it. We can translate it two ways. All of the Tzfardeya is Epigangen, that's the Tzfardeya went up. Beis Batal hat Tzfardeya, that makes others Tzfardeya. Als Mafil makes others. The Tzfardeya gemacht Eufgehen. Batal, the Tzfardeya is Tal, not the Tzfardeya went up, the first one, but Batal hat Tzfardeya, the Tzfardeya makes going up. Tzfardeya hat gemacht Eufgehen andere Tzfardeya. Batal, this Tzfardeya made other Tzfardeya. Und die zwei Protim in Pirush HaMedrash, these two details in the meaning of the Medrash. Aleph, as Arnot gebracht ein Tzfardeya, that he actually brought up only one Tzfardeya. Beis, as die Tzfardeya meilig van andere brought up others, werden ongedeit in the zwei Teitchen, are pointed to in these two translations. Aleph, Batal had Tzfardeya achas, the Tzfardeya went up, one Tzfardeya. Batal had Tzfardeya, the Tzfardeya brought up, but that's the second thing, that it gave out Nechil. So the Tzfardeya was bringing up. The Midbar Tech verstandig was Rashi bring the Drash. That's where also the Rashi brings the Drash. The Matezes Nechilim. Rashi brings that of the Werter Vatala Tzfardeya on the word tells it Unite Vatchas Eretz Mitzrayim, not that covered in Mitzrayim. The Rebbe teaches Vatala Tzfardeya. The Tzfardeya made bring up all the other Tzfardeya. So why is this Medrash? So it seems like the Pasuk includes them both, but Tzvala Tzfardeya doesn't mean two things, it means one of the two. And here we're saying that it means them both. Agam, that Pirush hot and unhalt in Loshna Pasuk. Even though this interpretation has a hold in the language of the Pasuk, because we can touch Vatala Tzfardeya both ways, you know. Doch sagt Rashi if der Mazel Medrash. Still Rashi said this is the Medrash. But Lloyd and Pirush Musman Zogen, because according to this interpretation, we have to say, as the zwei verschiedene Teichen, the two different interpretation or ways of finding from Vatala Tzfardeya, the Tzfardeya went up, Beida Pasif, they both happened. Vatala Tzfardeya. The Tzfardeya went up, and the Tzfardeya made the others today. But those need to that's not sustained. We can't learn that in the way that we learned the simple meaning in Mikra. Sees the derech from Medrashi. That's the style of the Medrash. In Pshat, we have to teach it in one way. Batal, vider hemshech vatchas, went up as it covered. Muzman lernen, as mitzvardei b'losh yochid ben gemein shirutz atzvardim. That's why we have to say that it's not talking about the many or the Tzfardeya made it. It's the Tzfardeya, what that covered is the Tzal Tzfardeya, and that Gemein Shirutz Atzvardim, that becomes the Pshuter Shomikra. From deswegen bringt es Rashi als zweiten Pirush, he brings us as a second Pirush. Und der Pirush Ikri is Medrashi, the main Pirush is Medrash, weil Aleph, B'tzad Teuchen HaKsuven is the Pirush on Medrash, Mer Masim zu Pshuter Shomikra, Kinal Sivhei. In the context of the Psukim, it's more fitting because we understand in the hey why it's more fitting, because over here the pasuk is trying to tell you it's Tzfardeya versus all the previous time that it was one Tzfardeya that brought about many. That's why there's a change of pasuk. But otherwise, if it means this Shirus, why happens over here Shirus Atzvardim? Why the pasuk decide to do it at this point? Say it this way. Beis oichter etzem obtaich from word Tzfardeya. The actual translation was is mer glatik like the pirush from Medrash. Tzfardeya means actually Tzfardeya be like the pirush At this means Shirutz Hatzvardim can also Gimel, as it heard before in Gimel, that to say that it means Shirutz Hatzvardim, Tzvardeya, once it makes more sense. Test. From Yenu Shalteidim Pirush Rashi. This is the wine of Torah of Rashi. This is Farana Klau. There is a rule as Hamaschil b'mitzvah emrim le'gemoy. I was going to explain these two Pirushim in Rashi based upon the two interpretation, based upon the rule that one who starts a mitzvah, we tell him to finish. Und die Chazals warnen wegen der strenge Einschub, the Chazal tell us, warn us about the very serious punishment that come was coming to them. Was man can goymer sein bis nicht goymer a mitzvah. That if a person has the ability to conclude, to finish, and does not finish a mitzvah, he say the mitzvah, and even more than this. And especially when you study Torah with another person, the Torah says, you have to put it in front of them that it should be like a prepared table that is ready for the person to eat. You know, don't leave anything ambiguous, don't leave anything not finished, make it all ready. So you have the idea when you start a mitzvah, finish it. And especially when it comes to Torah, we say, make it, put it out there that it should be very, very clear and like ready to eat right there. But on the other hand, what happens if I eat vase as sleep gewisse unvermeidliche sibes because of reason that is unpreventable, but that the ungegebene mitzvah nit kenna goyim sein. He won't be able to conclude it. Torah is that should not, God forbid, prevent him. He's not allowed to hold back from zu seiner Matzchel the mitzvah to be opening up a mitzvah und zu mekayim sein dem Teil von der mitzvah was for a meglach and to fulfill the part of the mitzvah which is possible for him. Like we find Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't finish it, and yet he did the beginning. As at Mabdug when the Gimel Orim Miklot in Yarden, he separated the three cities of refuge on the other side of the Jordan, even though he knew he's not going to come to Eretz Yisrael, he's not going to pass the Yarden, he's going to pass away over there. But he did whatever he could. They would not function until those will be in land of Canaan. Yet he made sure to do it. But mitzvah he said, a mitzvah that I can do, I will do. As I suffering them, when you're not sure whether you're going to be able to finish. When you're not sure, was is gemaru shlemes mitzvah. So the more you're not sure, is by mitzvahs al derech von tzedakah. So let's say by mitzvah, let's say tzedakah, you're not sure if you're going to be able to do it. Is called hamar behareze meshuach. So over there, the more you do, if tzedakah, even though you don't know you're going to finish, but the more you do it, the better off you are. But if it's a mitzvah of giving lashes, is lo yosef. The Torah says, don't add pen yosef. Be careful, don't a suffix, don't do it. Is vanad lekamo, the das kamo is batzri rabbanon chada. According to many, why didn't Chachamim that Chachamim took away one of the mitzvahs of the Malchus? They said instead of 40, they only made 39. Because they were afraid to do too much. So some mitzvahs, when you're not sure if you're able to do it as more, the more the better. Sometimes we say don't do it if you're not sure, because you might do it too much and then you shouldn't do it. Al derech zeh is the unterschied zwischen the zwei Pirushim and Rashi. Similar is the difference between these two commentaries in Rashi. Leuten ersten Pirush kommt to according to the first interpretation. It turns out as Aaron hat aufgetan dem Halas Tzvardim, he brought up the Tzvardim. He started. Aber Vatchas is Eretz Mitzrayim. Who ended up covering the land of Egypt is gekommen später durch die Vaeira. That came later on to those who were beating it. Aber Leute in zweiten Pirush kommt to but according to the second Pirush, turns out as Aaron hat Eugeton und ganze Shirut Tzvardim, that Aaron was the one that accomplished the entire swarming of the Tzvardim. Was hat Mechasik von Eretz Mitzrayim, that covered Eretz Mitzrayim. Warum die Tzvardim seinen gewähnt Aleph, because these Tzvardim were, number one, the Pashtus, Magiv and Nogav the Mitzrayim. They were a plague and a smiting for the Egyptian. The far bipshute, that's why simply had Aaron Abgiton Alas. He did the whole thing. The Shirutzatz did the whole thing. He covered up. Beis, number two, it has a Pu'ula, as Kidei Parizol, the Fundarshan and Lernen. We wanted that Paris should expound from this and learn from this. As a Dav Zain, the Noch Veshlachas, he has to send them away. But Aaron Euch Giton, also according to the Drash, as is given the Noch Makinoi, so he did the beginning and let them beat it on later. In other words, Leute befahren sein Teure bederach HaMedrash Hadrash in the first shot is das also ich bin gehe dem Pirush von dem Zivui Bahalis as Hatzvardim. This is also the way we translate when it says the command, bring up the tzvardim. What does it mean when Hashem tells originally Moshe the tzivui, not when what he did, but when he tells lav davke hatzvardim kipshutei rabim? It doesn't necessarily mean you should bring up many. Bring only one tzvardeya. Bald das is an inyan al derech for Malchus, since this is a beating. It's Nogov Mitzrayim, you're beating up the Mitzrayim, is Batzri. So then you diminish it, you don't do the full. Unangenommen as the Tzivut gemeint Achas. So therefore, we accept that the Torah means one. In the Todach Shash Ben Yosef, then would be no worry that do extra, you just do just the minimum necessary. The Erof and the Beide Perushim is, what is the lesson from these in commentary? The Mershten Pirush, as Aaron hat gebracht, nur Tzvardei Achas lernt man up. From the first commentary that Aaron just brought, one Tzvardei we learn as Oib Midas Puronis Makele Mitzrayim. Even if we're talking about punishment when we're beating up the Egyptian. Kach, so they only bring Tzvardei, don't bring them all. Maybe you make too much, so just start with one. So the good measure, how much more so? That you must forewarn the issue that you should not come to less, God forbid. Und von zweiten Pirush, von welchen es kommt aus, the second Pirush, there comes out as Aaron had goimer given the mitzvah. That he did the whole mitzvah because he swarmed it, he covered it. We have the lesson that we have to do a mitzvah in its wholesomeness. From the beginning to the end and completion. And when you're dealing, for example, in the mitzvah to bringing another yid close to Torah mitzvahs, or terms of kulam, the learning of Torah, which corresponds to all. You should not be satisfied with the beginning of bringing him close. But rather you have to conclude till the end. Ton mit him, to do work with him, bis as sein, there should be like a prepared table in the total highest level. But if you're in a situation, we can only have the ability to start as vet nor can machen das make the beginning. In them, starting bringing him close to mitzvahs, so you might think, what is the pula as vet on him to turn? So what is the benefit? You just start to do mityanim. Besser weiß nicht, wer damit öfter. You don't know if you're going to really accomplish. Wer weiß, mit was es wird sich enden später. So who knows how it's going to end later on. If then kommt the hero habura, then we have the above instruction as mitzvah she'efshel l'kaimai kaimena for Moshe Rabbeinu. A mitzvah that I can do, let me do it. Bechlal, medarf sich nicht hineinlosen in cheshbonis. One should not get into calculations. We should not go and try to figure out Hashem's ways and doing His cheshbonis. Das ist nicht sein Esek, that's not your business. Darf you need to begin and do. People that can to the extent you can. If zu Mekara sein hat zweiten Eden, to be bring another Eid close. Und noch mehr, tut kol boy. Furthermore, when you actually do everything that you can, is machshava tova kodesh baruch hu mitzaref alamais. Hashem connects it to an action. The Eibishter is mitzaref, and bringt darauf sein machshava tova lemaise, brings down your good thought into action. B'shas der Eibishter is goimer the mitzvah. When Hashem concludes the mitzvah, wird das angetan, wird das abgetan und keine Bedizvagbolas. Then it's accomplished without any measure, without any limitation. Bis in Tachlis or Ilu Bahashlemus, to the complete, ultimate elevation and wholesomeness. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Vaeira Tov Shin Chof Zayin.